please welcome our next speaker, Adam Sudd. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to tell you all my story. My name is Adam Sudd. I was born in Houston, Texas in the summer of 1982. This is my family. This is my mom and my dad. That's my identical twin brother, Bobby, and my little sister, Jewel. I had an incredible childhood. My mom inspired my imagination, and my dad taught me how to play every single sport under the sun. But by the time I was 11 years old, my relationship with my dad started to change. He became very hypercritical. He could be very mean to me. He would get very angry with me. And being in his presence didn't feel like such a safe, secure, or hopeful place to be. It wrecked my self-worth. We moved from Houston, Texas to Austin, Texas right before I started high school. And I was an insecure, overweight kid who was medicated for ADHD, and I was terrified to start high school not knowing anyone, and I quickly became the target of really intense bullying. Physical bullying, verbal bullying. In fact, it was so bad that when I would get dropped off at school, the teachers would have to get eyes on me to make sure that I made it into the school safely. I was medicated with Adderall to treat ADHD, and as soon as these bullies noticed that I was taking Adderall in the middle of school, I had to take a second dose in the middle of class, all of a sudden, they stopped bullying me. They started to act as if they were my friends. I know they weren't my friends, but my goodness, it looked enough like it. And I just wanted to stop being bullied. I just wanted to feel safe. And I can remember being at a party with them and using Adderall for the first time as a recreational drug. And let me tell you, the second that high dose took effect, boom, I was immediately hooked. But not to the substance, but to what it was able to do for me with ease and repeatability. Adderall is amphetamine. And as an insecure, shy kid, being on high doses of Adderall made me feel like a superhero. I had all this unbelievable confidence with ease and repeatability. That was incredibly attractive. I was able to lose weight with ease and repeatability. That's attractive. I was no longer being hurt. School felt safe for the first time with ease and repeatability. And now my relationship with my dad was changing. He noticed I wasn't complaining about being beat up at school. I wasn't complaining about school at all. And I was losing weight. All of a sudden, my dad seemed to like me. Adderall seemed to make my life a safe, secure, and hopeful place to be for the first time in a long time, and I loved it. By the time I was in college, things took a turn. That's when more became not enough, and not enough became an ever-constant problem. How much do I have left? How long will it last? Where will I get more? How much is it going to cost? Where am I going to get the money to pay for it? Adderall became the most important thing in my life, and I dropped out of college. I dropped out of college and I came back to Austin for one simple reason. I knew the doctors I could scam and the dealers that I could buy from. And I became a criminal drug addict. I was doctor shopping and forging prescriptions. I was buying and selling drugs on the street. I was stealing from people. I was treating my family like absolute garbage. I was using so much that I would be completely out within 7 days. And I couldn't stand to be present in my life, so I needed something to substitute the drug use. And I found fast food was a phenomenal substitute. This is me when I was just over 300 pounds. When I say I had a problem with fast food, I would get up every single day, and for about a week straight, I would eat somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 calories of fast food a day. When I say I was struggling with substance use, the average prescription for Adderall is about 10 milligrams for every 24 hours. At this point in my life, I was doing a minimum of 450 milligrams a day and upwards of 1,000. I would run out of a 90-day prescription in 7 days. I would end up in the beginning stages of a drug-induced psychosis. I'd be very paranoid. I would develop debilitating obsessive-compulsive tics. And the only way that I could get this to stop was to pop massive amounts of opiates so that I could fall asleep, wake up, and start this whole cycle all over again. Life hurt. And I didn't understand how it was once the greatest solution I'd ever found had become the most overwhelming problem I'd ever faced. Now, I'd given my parents every reason in the world to give up on me, but my dad, regardless of how difficult our relationship is, my dad never gives up on people that he loves, and he came to me with an opportunity. My dad is one of the founders of Whole Foods Market. In 2010, Whole Foods Market partnered with a man named Rip Esselstyn. He's one of the pioneers of the plant-based movement. and they created a 7-day immersive retreat experience for the team members of Whole Foods Market, where they would go and learn how to live a plant-based lifestyle in order to empower their team members to take charge of their health and reverse disease. And my dad begged me to go. Adam, please do this. I'm begging you, please. Now look, I didn't know what a plant-based diet was. I didn't want to know what a plant-based diet was. But what I did know is if I could convince my dad that I cared about this stupid retreat, I could get him to keep giving me money. So yeah, I went to this retreat. I showed up high out of my mind. In fact, by this point in my life, I was living like a hoarder. I wasn't showering or brushing my teeth for months at a time. I smelled very toxic. I would sweat through about 3 shirts a day. My appearance and presence was so disruptive, they even considered removing me from the program, but they didn't. And I went to every single lecture. I listened to every single thing that was being said, and it did make sense. I listened to luminary thought leaders, doctors and researchers, who talked about the power of nutrition and its ability to allow you to take charge of your life. And I wish I could tell you that after 7 days of this retreat, I changed my life. But here's the thing. I wasn't willing to give up what was allowing me to escape a life that was too painful, lonely, and scary a place to be on the gamble that this might work for me in a year. Couldn't do it. And so my life got worse. And by 2012, it was the worst it had ever been. I was 350 pounds. I had erectile dysfunction for reasons I didn't understand. My family had cut me off. I hadn't spoken to my sister in a year. My friends had cut me off. I was 2 weeks away from being homeless. I was practicing self-harm on a regular basis and battling suicidal thoughts. Every single day that I was alive was the most painful day of my life. And I lived every day in full confidence that tomorrow was always going to be worse. And when you live there long enough, eventually tomorrow is just not a place you want to be. So on August 21st of 2012, in this apartment, I tried to end my life by suicide. I grabbed a handful of pills, and I just started taking them one at a time. Now, I'd had overdoses before, but as this started to take effect, it felt distinctly different. And I can remember I was starting to get a little scared, and as I tried to stand up off of this couch, it felt like I got stabbed in the right side with a hot knife. My entire right side of my body cramps. I start to fall forward, and as I do, my vision starts going black. And I'm going to tell you guys, the feeling that I had in that moment, and I'm not talking about the physical description that I just laid out for you all. I'm talking about the feeling. I don't know what it feels like to die, but I do know what it feels like to believe that you're dying with a life full of regret. And that is a terrifying place to be. And I don't know what happens after we die. I don't know if we get to go on to something else. I don't know if we get to come back for round 2 as someone else. But what I became very aware of is that we all get to experience life here as the individuals that we are now once. And I saw that being taken from me. And as my vision went completely black, I had one last moment of consciousness, and I just remember asking, God, give me one more second. I survived, and as soon as I had the opportunity, I picked up the phone, I called my parents, and I said the 3 words I had been avoiding for half my life. I need help. And without question or judgment, my parents said, Adam, we love you. We love you whether you're using or you're not. We don't know what to do, but let us help you make the first step. They helped me check into treatment. And I went into treatment in Arizona, and I can tell you, it was a very difficult experience. It felt very dehumanizing. I kind of felt like a criminal. They strip search you. They search your belongings. You're put through a whole host of psychological evaluations, medical evaluations, a physical examination. And as a person who had spent his entire life being told by his father, by his bullies, and even by himself that his body is a disgusting, shameful thing, and that he is not worth loving, having someone examine me for everything that was wrong was awful. And I had to go in the next day to see the doctor, and I walk in and I get diagnosed with advanced type 2 diabetes. I had cholesterol of over 300. My blood pressure was 210 over 115. My resting heart rate was 115. I got diagnosed with suicidal depression, anxiety disorder, sleep disorder, attention deficit disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and I was put on a cabinet's worth of medication for life. And my entire idea of what I thought I was about to be doing was shattered. I honestly believed that my goal was to just not use for as long as possible and hope my life would get better. But what became aware to me was that if I wasn't willing to change everything about the way that I moved through the world, 5 years was not a guarantee. And if it was a terrifying and painful place to be. I decided in that moment that if I really wanted to do this thing, if I wanted to make it, what I needed to do was reverse engineer aliveness. I wanted to become the architect of a life that would feel like such a safe, secure, and hopeful place to be, that use would be no longer necessary because being present in my life would be such an exciting thing to do. I was immediately transported back to those 7 days I spent with Rip Esselstyn and his team. And I told myself, I don't know anything about addiction or depression or anxiety at this point, but I do know how to put food on my plate. So what I'm going to do is build this road of recovery on a foundation of plant-based nutrition. Now, they wouldn't let me change my diet in rehab, so after 37 days in rehab hospital, I moved into a sober living facility in Santa Monica. And in sober living, that's where you really learn to live your life without substances. In rehab hospital, it's just a safe place to not use. This is where you learn to make your bed and make your meals and go to your meetings and do your therapy. And I lived there with like 12 other guys. And how it works is you would go up to the house manager and you would write a list of everything that you need for the week. And he would send a driver out to get everything, bring it back, and stock the house with whatever you want. I said, this is it. This is where I'm going to do a plant-based diet. So I walked up to the house manager, whose last name is actually Hamburger, and told him that I want to do a plant-based diet. And he says, you know, Adam, I don't really know what that is, but you tell me what you need and you got it. I get up the next morning and I am the most motivated human you've ever met in your life. I mean, I strut into that kitchen. I open the cabinet and there is the container of oats that I asked for, and they put it right next to a box of Fruity Pebbles, which is the greatest cereal of all time. This is not up for debate. This is a law of the universe. And I don't know what happened next. I do remember that I threw a fit. I was told I threw something at someone. I know I started crying. I just couldn't understand it. What in the world was going on? How is it that I could know what to do in order to change my life, and yet it'd be so damn difficult to do it? Why wasn't this whole thing simply a matter of intellect and will? Why can I not know what to do, want to do it, end of story? What was going on? And I came across the work of an evolutionary psychologist named Dr. Doug Lisle, who wrote this book called The Pleasure Trap. He has a TED Talk by the same name. And in this work, he describes the biological, psychological, and motivational mechanism that compels behavior. That we all inside of us have a guidance system that is driven by our dopamine neurocircuitry. And it helps us figure out what's the right move to make in order to survive to tomorrow. And in the appropriate environment, an environment that looks like the environment that we spent the majority of our evolutionary story, an environment of scarcity and competition, this guidance system works really well. But as you start to mess with the environment, as you start to introduce supernormal stimuli that elicit a dopamine response that goes way outside of the bounds of what is appropriate for our psychology, we end up misguiding our survival instincts. We hijack them and we fool them into thinking and feeling like we're doing very, very successful things when in fact we're self-destructive. As soon as I understood the biology of this, I had all this shame lifted from me, because I truly believed that the reason why I had a meltdown in front of a box of Fruity Pebbles is because I was a loser. I thought I had no discipline and no willpower. I mean, how could that not be what was happening? I knew what to do. I wanted to change my life, and yet I couldn't even make a choice for oats once. But it turns out that the reason why that decision was so hard is because that is actually the appropriate and expected response my psychology should be having to a stimuli that was never supposed to exist, especially when every part of that person's life is difficult and painful. My struggle made sense. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a loser. And if I was willing to do one thing, be comfortable being uncomfortable, I actually had an opportunity to reset my dopamine neurocircuitry. If I could just make the healthy choice long enough, my dopamine receptors would regain sensitivity, and eventually the oats wouldn't be such a chore. And if I could do it just a little bit longer, I'd actually look forward to it. So why would I be willing to do it? Why in the world would I be willing to make this choice, especially when I'm already trying to get off drugs, I'm having to go to therapy, 5 hours a day, I'm living with 12 guys I don't really like in a sober living facility. Why would I also want to add this to my plate? From the outside perspective looking in, you could look at me and go, well, it's obvious. He's 350 pounds, he has diabetes, heart disease, erectile dysfunction, he nearly died from substance abuse. How could that not be why he's doing it? I'm going to tell you it's true, every one of those things was occurring, but none of them were my motivation. We are not motivated by negative consequences for long-term change. Negative consequences do a wonderful thing. They let you know that there are loving, meaningful, and irreplaceable bonds in your life that are being threatened. The loving, meaningful, and irreplaceable bonds that give you the experience of feeling meaningfully alive. It is whatever those things are. That is why you already do what you do. It's why you learn to do something new. It's why you learn to do things better. It is an act of service to what it is that life makes wonderful for you. I told myself I was going to focus less on what is the matter with me and more on what matters to me. Become the caretaker of myself and my life for the first time ever. I had been convinced by the world, by my father, by my bullies, and even myself, that my body and my mind was an adversary. It was something that I had to get up every single day and outcompete through punishment, restriction, and exertion, and hopefully one day win a battle on a scale, or win a battle in the classroom, or win a battle with my work, or win a battle with myself where I could actually get a shred of liking myself for a second before the next day started and hate myself all over again. But the reality is, the only reason why I survived everything I'd been through, the only reason I survived the bullying, the drug use, and the suicide attempt is because my body has been fighting for me since the day I was born. My body is the greatest ally I have ever had. The world convinced me differently, and I believed it. My decision now was to build an environment that allowed me the opportunity to, with ease and repeatability, be the caretaker for a body who's always on my side. I wanted to spend zero time trying to outcompete toxic environments and toxic people in order to be successful with my goals. I wanted to build an environment that looked like my goals. I wanted my kitchen to look like a healthy eater. I wanted the people that I surrounded myself. They didn't have to live life exactly like me, but it had to look enough like it. They had to be passionate about health and wellness. They had to be passionate about recovery. They had to be passionate about therapy and passionate about self-development, so that by being in their presence, they encouraged me the opportunity to live in alignment with my goals. I made every meal on a plate an affirmation of self-care and self-love. I made every meal on a plate an affirmation of recovery. Within 4 months, I completely reversed my heart disease, my diabetes, and my erectile dysfunction. Within 10 months, I lost over 100 pounds, and within a year, I was off of every single medication I was put on in rehab, including the antidepressants, the mood stabilizers, the sleeping medications, the anxiety medications, and the ADHD medications. I've been in continuous recovery for 11 and a half years. And I know that what I just told you makes it seem like I did it all myself, but I know this for certain. Addiction, depression, and anxiety thrive in isolation. In fact, they require it, but they all get their asses kicked by community. And I have the best community in the world, and it starts with my mom and my dad. As difficult as my dad was for me, I was equally difficult for him. And I could say 1,000 wonderful things about my parents, and they deserve them all because they are my heroes in this story. I like to show you these two photos. This was taken by my mom as she and my dad walked me in the doors of rehab. And this was taken 3 years later. She watched my dad and I run the race in Austin. They have walked this entire journey with me. They allowed me to get it wrong and not judge me for it. They gave me permission to figure it out as I went along. I'm so grateful that they're able to see the profound change that I've been able to have. And this is great. The physical change is amazing. I am really proud of what I've been able to achieve. And I could put up a stupid quote like the simplest change on your fork can make the most profound change of your life. But please don't believe that this is what I'm talking about. This is the stuff that Instagram likes. But let me show you what real profound change looks like. I have the best friends in the world. Every single one of these people has texted me this morning, cheering me on for this moment. They are my community of shared and meaningful respect. They want me to be a part of the goings-on of what makes their life meaningful, and I want them to be that for me. In 2020, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Laura Gouge, who is one of the brightest minds in neuroatypical brains, gut health, hormone health. She's absolutely brilliant. And I also think she's incredibly beautiful. I mean, I could look at that photo all day long. I don't have to because I married her. You want to know what profound change looks like? Profound change is spending the majority of your life believing that you're not ever going to be worthy of loving yourself, let alone having someone love you. To one day standing up and staring into the presence of the most passionate, brilliant, beautiful woman that you've ever met in your entire life and listening to her say the words, "I do." That is profound change. And I'm going to tell you, I cannot believe that I almost ended my life right before the best part ever began. Now, when we talk about addiction, we have to really start asking better questions. Everyone wants to ask, why won't they stop? That's reasonable. When you're witnessing someone using, you're thinking, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why won't you stop? But what you have to do is pause and consider from a subjective point of view what's actually taking place inside that person's mind. That person has very little, if any, reason to feel like life is something they want to be a part of. Being present in their life is an excruciating and painful experience. So to them, their use feels like salvation. To them, their use makes complete sense. It looks and feels exactly like self-care. That's what addiction actually is. It's misguided self-care. A much better question to ask is, why does their use make sense? Why, if I were you and my life looked like yours, why would I likely be doing the exact same thing? We have to understand that when people are suffering, they will do almost anything to be something other than what they are, which is in pain. Addiction makes sense. Addiction is not an indication of biology and psychology gone wrong, but rather the expected and appropriate response to environments gone terribly wrong. Addiction, depression, and anxiety make sense. People who are addicts are not criminals, they're humans in pain. People who are depressed are not sick, they're humans in pain. And people who are suicidal are not crazy, they're humans in pain. And maybe if we stop so desperately trying to define everyone by what they struggle with, it will be easier for us to listen to their needs. And then we'll see that their needs make sense. If you know someone who's struggling, if you love someone who's struggling, you don't need to have answers. You don't need to know what to say. More than answers to our struggle, we just want to know that we're not alone in this world. We want to be reminded that we've not been forgotten by those who matter the most to us. We want to be reminded that there's a place being saved for us within that community of shared and loving respect. So if we decide to take on the extraordinary effort of climbing this incredible hill of recovery, when we get to the other side, the loving and meaningful bonds that give us the experience that life is something we want to be a part of will be waiting there with open arms. I've been able to do amazing things since I got into recovery. I went back to school. I became a nutrition and addiction researcher. I actually led and published the very first controlled trial investigating the effects of nutrition on addiction recovery outcomes in treatment facilities. I've been able to become an expert in insulin resistance and help over 1,000 people reverse diabetes permanently. But I've also lost a lot. I've lost 6 friends to overdose. It's a side effect of being in recovery for a long time. Not everyone you love makes it out with you. But one of the things that I like to do when I end a talk is honor one of those friends. One of them had one of the best quotes I've ever heard in my entire life. He said, "Adam, if you want to be healthy, please don't live like it's the last day of your life. Treat everyone you meet as if they're living the last day of their life." Make Big happen. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much.